everybody. I'm Regina Campbell. I'm your host here at the Legal Zone, and we're happy to bring you another episode. Today, we're going to be talking about Miami luxury homes, how to buy and sell, how to sell them, basically. And we have a wonderful guest that's going to join us, and I'm going to introduce Ms. Melva Garcia in a moment. But I do want to talk about our last speaker, just to remind everyone, if you're interested in seeing the last podcast, it was Mr. Alfredo Gonzalez Amaro, was able to provide us some pointers as to how to make investments here in Miami, and particularly for Latin American investors coming into the country to help them basically get pointers on how to do so and enter into this country's market. But today, we are going to shift our topic of conversation. We're going to introduce our guest speaker, Melva Garcia, for our episode today, Miami Luxury Homes, How to Buy and Sell. Hi, Ms. Garcia, how are you?
Thank you for having me.
Yes, good. It's a pleasure to have you here. It's such a hot market in Miami. So
It still is.
It still is.
Contrary to all negative news, it still is.
We're kind of like that inflation buster, aren't we? We're
Yeah.
sort of, but we don't really ride always the regular rules, I think.
We don't. I mean, real estate is geographical. And so the markets are geographical. You have to look at each market. When we look at the statistics that we see oftentimes on the news and negative press, they're looking at everything.
It's true.
And Miami, South Florida, but Miami and the Tri-County area, we're very different. And post-COVID,
Yes.
entirely different, changed forever.
Wonderful. Sounds fantastic. So this is why we brought Melva on. She's a friend of mine also, so I'm going to call her Melva. She doesn't mind. I want to give you a little bit of background on Melva and her experience also, because I think it's very, very important to know where she's coming from and her experience as to why she is an authority on this issue and can help people also understand and give tips for how to buy and sell, particularly luxury homes. So Mrs. Garcia, or Melva, it helps provide high quality concierge type services as a real estate agent affiliated with Compass. Compass. Okay, sorry, I'm going to say that differently. Different languages. Her dedicated team of sales agents and brokers assist clients with all of their real estate needs. With the years of combined experience in every aspect of the real estate industry, Melva adds that key ingredient that makes her distinct in the real estate world. She helps you from negotiating to financing, to help selling and purchasing different homes. And she also works with buyers and sellers, of course, purchase transactions and homes, and tries to make the process as seamless and smooth as possible. So we are very grateful to have her here today. And with that, I want to ask our first question. That is such a hot topic here, and particularly in Miami. And for people coming into Miami, I think they need to know, right?
Yeah.
So as an experienced professional in the real estate market, can you tell us about the varying difficulties that people are having of buying and selling luxury homes in Miami?
In general, the luxury clientele, with what they call that 1%, they typically know what they want. They have the money to buy it. They're private. Their security, they may have more assets. They may have artwork. So dealing with them is a little bit different. I think when you work with anyone, you try to make them a friend, right? Yes. So that's the best part of what I do. You end up,
yes,
I was your realtor, yes, and ended up friends. So
yes,
you get to know them throughout the transaction. You ask questions. You learn a little bit about their lives, about what they're going through at that moment. What is their motivation to buying? So the luxury seller or buyer, they're a lot more private.
Okay.
So they're not as easy to give up that information.
Makes sense.
For many different reasons. And so it takes a little bit more gauging, a little more time, more questions. Typically in conversation, nothing, you can't send them, like sometimes we send clients a questionnaire to kind of get to know them. You can't do that with them. You just have to get to know them and pay close attention to the things they say, even to the people that they're around. Yeah. Oftentimes they have advisors. So you really have to get to know who their trusted advisor is that is going to be with them throughout this process, because oftentimes that's the person you're going to be dealing with.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So a lot of times it's also the trusted advisor knows what they're looking for, whether it's, like you're saying, privacy. I've had some clients also that want anonymity they don't want their title, have their name on title, so to speak. aside from investment concerns and other issues that might come about, right, for purchasing a property and asset protection, so to speak. But I guess that's when you talk to them. Do they like it this way? Do they like certain views? What are they concerned with? Do they want extra security? I guess that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
What is the house for, I guess, and everything?
So, for instance, a seller that has, you know, a multi-million-dollar home, they may have millions of dollars hanging on their walls.
Wow.
This is artwork. It's not like they can pack it up and move it into a warehouse temporarily because they have to keep certain climate controls. It doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
So you really have to know, this is where, like, you know, we all talk about having clients that come directly to you. I love working as a transaction agent with another agent, a qualified agent on the other side. Why? Because that agent knows their buyer.
That's true.
So when she brings me or he brings me, when an agent brings me a buyer and it's a luxury property, I feel a lot more comfortable going right into it. I'll even question the agent. Okay, so do you know their financials? And a lot of the times the agents will tell me.
Yeah.
I've known them. I've known the family. I've done multiple transactions for them. You know, it's not like they have to bring you and give you a proof of funds because they may not want to do that.
No, that makes sense. But also you want to make sure you're not wasting your time or someone's not just trying to sneak into someone's home to do a listing.
That's the worry. Yeah, that's the biggest worry, I think. If I were a seller and I put myself in their shoes, you know, walking into some of these closets, they probably have millions of dollars in handbags. Wow. And shoes and things of that nature. You know, good for them. They enjoy it and this is the life they want. But they also, you know, don't want to be that exposed, you know, because when you're showing your home, you're exposing your closets, your bathrooms, everything, your private life. I mean, it's
your style, you're literally almost your underwear drawer, although hopefully no one's opening drawers.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're seeing other aspects. Yeah.
Right. So this isn't the type of showing where you have the aunt, the grandmother, you're typically going to try and show to as little, as few people as possible, not having that rotation, revolving door, especially if the home is occupied. If it's unoccupied, then typically the value is on the take.
Okay. That makes sense. Also, I guess securities, sometimes they have to be concerned with someone getting to know the floor plan, I assume, of their house, for you never know what nefarious intent
that happened to me. That actually happened to me. And, I had a seller that, God bless her, I love her, we're still good friends, but she insisted on being there for all of the showings.
Okay.
And I didn't really, the buyers came without an agent. I for some reason, my spidey senses were off.
Yeah.
And I oftentimes bring somebody to those showings. So I'll bring an associate with me and we'll both be there to see what's going on. So we'll walk through the home. And so, they'll walk behind me or we'll switch it up to make sure that everybody's going to the same rooms. No, they're not splitting up.
They're not allowing them to just walk around.
Right. They're not just roaming through the home.
Okay.
And I had that happen. So she was there and she hears them ask about the home floor plan and the security system, which at that point had been disconnected.
Okay.
They had had an issue with the alarm and she told me it's disconnected. So I knew that. And so when she pops in and says, well, let me show you the control room. It's disconnected, but we have all of this here and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm just like, my heart is going.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had my associate with me and I said, hey, do me a favor, take them outside. And, and then they asked, do you have floor plans? And she popped up again. Of course I have floor plans. Let me get them in the office. And so I asked her to take them in the yard and I took her into the office and I said, I'm sorry, with all due respect, I'm trying to protect you here.
Yes.
I don't know these buyers. I don't want, and I explained to her, I said, this is the security of your family. Yeah. And she just kind of froze. Yeah. And I remember, I felt really bad because I had to be almost stern with her.
Yes.
And she later on apologized and I said, you have to trust me. You cannot just let me walk them through. Yeah. There are certain things you really, you shouldn't be saying because it's for your own safety.
Yeah. And they don't realize it because a lot of times you think people are like you. They don't have nefarious intent. They're just here to look.
And she's like that. She's just like, let me make cafecito for you. It's just the way she is.
That would be me. Yeah, we'll stick with them and everything. You know, so that's a really important point. That really is very distinct in the average sort of purchase, or even just showing of a property. So that's one of the things that sets you apart. Is why you know a lot about selling luxury homes and so forth. And this is tips hopefully helpful for everybody today. So I want to ask also, so what are the other difficulties you're seeing? Is it, I mean, I assume credit is not such an issue, but a lot of these buyers or sellers, I mean, like what's going on here, like the terms, the different kinds of things in these transactions, luxury home transactions currently?
I think across the board, and this is one thing that hasn't changed, it's whether it's luxury or not.
Yeah.
And this is something that most attorneys would recommend against is a post-occupancy.
Okay, yes.
So as an attorney, you're going to tell your seller, no, don't do it, because of course it creates somewhat of a landlord-tenant relationship post-closing.
Yes.
And so, for different reasons, as tight as that post-occupancy agreement could be, it could get complicated.
It can.
And
you have to have a lot of teeth in them too.
Yeah.
Make sure you can get them out. And yes.
Well, the funny thing is we have been seeing like the post-occupancy agreements getting a lot more lax.
Okay.
The terms have been much more favorable to the buyer or the sale rather than the owner who's, because it changes.
Yeah.
So to the seller.
Right. I imagine some sellers may have to stay. They're having a hard time finding a new home. So they say, can I stay? I'll sell you the house and I'll close in 30 days, but I have nowhere to go.
That's exactly why we're seeing it. So because we have such a shortage in inventory, especially last year, the sellers, they would call you, they would tell you, I want to sell my home, but I don't see anything. So you start sending them properties right before they list it, but then they don't see anything that they like.
Yes.
So they're having trouble with that. And then, you have to, at that point, we shifted a little bit and had to say, look, we're more often than not able to negotiate a post-occupancy.
Yeah.
You're clear because in Florida, we're transaction agents. So, I have to tell them, this doesn't mean that this is your home. Once we close, it becomes this buyer's home. And you have to understand when they, leave here, you have your tenant now. But we've been able to navigate them. I even had one, and it was, again, a luxury home. It was a 90-day post-occupancy. And I thought, oh my goodness, I don't even know how we got it done. 90 days rent-free.
Wow.
I had never had one like that.
Yes, yeah.
And
someone wanted the house bad, apparently.
They really wanted the house. And the seller couldn't find a home.
Yeah.
So luckily she moved very fast, and we were on it, constantly on it. She found the home directly after they closed, and we were able to get it done. But it definitely oh no, and that one was a good one. And right at the end, it got messy. It got messy. The attorneys came into it. And at that point, I kind of like it when the attorneys step in because it takes so much pressure off of me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, now you guys have to work this out.
Right.
We not
snafus. I mean, I've seen situations where it's like the 90-day post-occupancy or 60 days, 30 days, whatever it is they agree to. The other person's closing on their property got delayed, and then an extra 15 days, but technically it goes past the contract period. And I'm really going to kick someone out for 15 days. Did they cause damage? Did they cause this? All of a sudden, you know what I mean? There's other things that start to appear that it's like, God forbid something happens with a roof or an incident or a hurricane. All of a sudden, it becomes more complicated. Those post-occupancy agreements are not very clear. What happens in those circumstances? Like, are they, renters technically?
The biggest issue that you just mentioned is, so the buyer buys and they're excited. They're now they own this home. They're paying all this money for it, and they have, all these expenses.
Yeah.
They want to come in to measure for curtains.
Yeah.
They want to come in to survey, to do this. They're going to be planning, an alteration of something.
Yeah.
And now the seller is packing and getting ready to leave. But now they don't want to be bothered.
No.
So, okay, one time you come in, but then the buyer's like, this is my home and I'm letting you stay here. So I want to come back again and again, as often as I need. And this is the time that my contractor could go. This is the time you need to give a sign. That is where it's almost impossible for any attorney to foresee all of these different scenarios.
In those situations, you almost have to create an actual landlord-tenant agreement to that extent, because then you at least have one party or another may not benefit, depending on the party who wants or doesn't want it, but at least it gives clarity. Now, under those circumstances, you can't be bothering the tenant unreasonably coming into their house every 5 minutes. So if you default to Chapter 83, landlord-tenant sort of rules, you have not, the rules, but the buyer may not be like, no, I want to be able to come in and out. Well, now we're going to put that in an agreement. And then is one time a week good? No, I need to come in twice a week. So they're going to go, no. And if it's not clear, it's like you're saying, that makes it even worse.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. I think that's probably been the biggest change.
Yeah.
And it's part of almost every transaction.
Wow. I guess because of the shortage in housing. Yeah. Wow. So no one's leaving Miami?
I think the statistics, I was looking at statistics from National Association of Realtors, and they said in 2021, for every 100 people that left Miami, 256 moved into Miami.
Yikes.
So it's not stopping either.
No.
This year we're seeing, I think it's Florida seeing maybe 834 relocations a day or something. Like, it's like this number. I forget the exact numbers, but it's this.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask you. How many of them are relocations? Like, and it sounds like, at least that you deal with. You've seen that's kind of consistent with these.
Very consistent.
Okay.
Very consistent. And we're seeing it at all levels.
Okay.
And it's all primarily due to COVID. I mean, we're seeing, as hard as we had it here, other countries still have it
a lot worse.
A lot worse. And when you have this unforeseen pandemic, who would have thought in our lifetime we would have seen that? Like, you would have said they're going to close the world down. You think you're in a movie, right?
Yes.
And so it happens. So what happens is, when things like that happen, it changes countries. It changed the U.S.
The psyches too, right?
Yeah, it changes everything. Yeah. And a lot of countries outside the U.S. that had it so hard, they're seeing the news. They're still undergoing very difficult times, economical, physical, political.
They created political upheaval as well. Yeah.
So a lot of them, if they're able to, they're coming here. They're buying here. They know that their money is safe here. No matter, no matter how much negative we hear about our market, you're always going to do better.
Always do better
with real estate.
It's
a long-term game.
It is, and it's a good place because it's not a place that's where people are exiting. It's some places in New York and California are having that issue. California and New York are California and New York, but they're having the issue. They're having more of an exodus. They're placed in New Jersey, Illinois. So they just, for different reasons. A lot of the multinationals are coming down to Miami and to Florida, but a lot of Miami, and that's unheard of because we used to not have these huge.
And New Yorkers.
Yeah.
Love in New York. And New Yorkers are true New Yorkers.
Yes.
It's funny you mentioned all those markets. New York, California, and Illinois are in the top 10 tax bracket. So
yes.
There's a reason why they're leaving. And then the others that we're seeing, and some is New Jersey, Pennsylvania. So there's like 4 or 5 that are the top.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned 4.
You have state income tax. So
the state income tax.
Yeah.
And we've been attracting technology.
Yes.
So Florida in 2021 was one of the top states to attract technology companies. So it's now, where before it was California.
Yes.
And what's happening is the CEOs are coming here.
Yeah.
And they are saying, wait a minute, they see a lot of negative press because we do, like every state.
Yes.
You see the press and they like to focus on the bad, but then they get here and they're like, what is this? I have one buyer on Miami Beach, and he was, he's moving his whole company here. And I asked him, I tried to ask, what is it that motivated you? And this was December, and we're in this beautiful condo in Miami Beach. And his kids are downstairs in the pool. And he says, I just got off the phone with, one of my friends in New York. There's a snowstorm.
Yeah.
And they're in lockdown.
Yeah.
And here we are, and it's December. My kids are in the pool. Everybody's tan and happy.
Yeah.
The restaurants are open. And it just makes sense. Like,
yeah. I was up there in December for my son's graduation. Shortly thereafter, they were just about to start locking people down. And of course the winter, some of the winter I missed, probably just wouldn't want to be there all winter, but in general, but yeah, they were locking down.
Yeah. And I love New York.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite places to visit.
New York's like my second home. Yeah. To be honest with you. Don't mind me, I'm just moving this. I got like a little ghost in the room. It seemed to like start moving on me. I don't know what it's doing here. I was like, okay, all right. So, and that makes sense. That kind of falls in line with a lot of what we've talked about in the past, or what people are seeing in the news and everything. Although it's not as, I know, the biggest problem is I think also people are coming in here, they're driving up the prices. So I think part of the issue is that then where do the employees go? Where do the other workers, because I hear a lot of CEOs, a lot of hedge funds coming here, some big capital companies coming down here, but then where do it kind of keeps expanding those boundaries.
I mean, but remember, they're coming from markets where rents are much higher than even our current high rates.
Okay.
So for them, if you're coming from California or New York, especially, which is, that's 20%.
Yeah,
that's the relocation buyers, 10%. Roughly from New York and 10% from California. If you're coming from those states, you're used to paying very high rents.
Okay.
If we've lived, us that have lived here for a very long time, we're like, what's going on? Why are you doing this?
An efficiency of 1,800, you're like,
yeah, it's insane, right? So it depends on the area, but they're finding, they come down here, and to them, to pay $400, $500, I'm sorry, to pay for a 400 or 500 square foot, unit on Brickell, $1,900, $1,800, they're okay with that.
They're okay with that. And I guess it's the Floridians that are like, what is that? They're sticker shock.
Yeah.
I'm hearing some rent going up 30%.
Yeah.
50%.
Oh, no. 50. Yeah, we're seeing 50%.
You can't afford it.
It's very, very difficult. And for our kids, kids who are in their 20s right now,
how do you afford that?
That are looking to, my assistant tells me all the time, she's like, I want to move. I want to find a place. And then when am I ever going to move? Because she sees, what we're looking at. And it is getting harder. Even with good incomes, it's getting harder.
Yes, you're making an increased income. It's still hard. My son was like, Mom, New York's so expensive. And he likes Miami as well. He likes both places. I'm coming down there and he starts looking. He's like, it's not that cheap down there. I go, no, honey, it is not.
Yeah, for him, sticker shock also because everybody's known Miami. The big difference between like Miami, California, and New York, it's, we're inching closer.
Yeah. So even $100,000 incomes don't go as far as they used to.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of, so that kind of answers some of the questions that we talked about, what's going on with, what are you seeing in these transactions? And I guess the answer was mostly the post-occupancy, and it does seem to ring true also. This, where everyone's coming in, the influx of a lot of relocators and sort of, people that are repatriating here or they're patriating here, depending on the circumstances.
I'm sure you're hearing about that, right?
Yes.
So,
quite a bit.
We listed a home last week, and I was surprised that a lot of the buyers, it's been that they're coming from Venezuela, from
Colombia, probably
from Colombia, even from Santo Domingo, like just from Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
we're seeing from different places, and some of them have had properties here, but one case in particular, they're moving. They have, I won't say what they do, but they have a very big chain in their current country, and they're moving. They're opening several locations here.
Interesting.
So now they're buying their properties, which I think helps them with their
Get their
visas.
visas, maybe, yeah, their visas.
So each one of the family members is buying
a particular,
Right, a particular
yes,
property.
yes, yeah.
And I was, foreign national loans were
Yeah.
kind of a thing of the past. That
Right.
was the 2000s,
Yeah.
right before the Great Recession.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to see them
more.
come back, which I love.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
great loans.
Absolutely.
These people really, and this,
Yeah.
they want their status here.
Yes.
They're not going to do anything to mess it up.
Yeah.
So they're coming in with large down payments. They take a little bit longer to close.
Yes. But they need to, but it's also part of them being able to come into the country. It's part of their visa. It's part of establishing here. And then when you have people that come from various countries, they want to see some of the name brands they're used to in their country. And if you have a lot of people coming here from Brazil or Colombia or Venezuela, they want to see some of those sort of chain stores that they had there that they're used to. Well, there's a lot of Venezuelan Colombians here. Great place to open up. A store here and bring it here. Makes all the sense, a little bit of home.
We're seeing it even more when you walk through the malls, right?
Yeah.
All these little pop-up shops.
Yes.
That you can see that they're a little bit different, beautiful stuff,
Yes.
especially handmade stuff.
Yes.
So I think it's awesome. I was so surprised and pleasantly surprised to see it.
Yeah, me too, as well. Definitely. So I think you've answered also the question, what kind of percentage of the homes in Miami are, I guess, from relocation? We've kind of talked a little bit about that as well. And do you find that's the primary reason for people selling and purchasing homes, so to speak, either to relocate somewhere in Miami, or because you're saying a lot of the people that are selling homes are still staying here?
Are still staying. Yeah. So in the past, statistics would show people would either come to retire in Miami,
yes,
or they'd retire outside Miami. So you would have the person that would sell their home and move. A lot of relocations from retirees to like North Carolina. I think Miami has become more metro, right?
Yes,
so it's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I think, if you're retired and you're living on an income now,
fixed income, yeah.
And you maybe want a little bit slower pace where you can drive to the corner to go to your local shop, and things like that, and not be bombarded with traffic.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing now post-COVID is, we also had pre-COVID, the younger population, as your son, that would leave here because all these tech jobs were in California, or they go to New York because this is where all of the big companies were, all the finance companies were, and law firms.
Yeah.
So that's where everybody wanted to be. Yeah. That's changed now.
It's coming back, right?
It's coming back. So the new graduates, they're saying, I don't want to be stuck. Now they know that there's a possibility of the world closing down.
Yes.
So that's changed forever in all these generations that have lived in it, that it could happen, so.
And also I think they feel a sense of empowerment, the great resignation. Right now there is a lot of flexibility, and unfortunately it probably will start to clamp down a little bit if recession comes around the corner. But right now the employees in general have more say. I want to work remotely. I want to work here. I want to make this much money. So it is more possible to live in different places. So if you want to live where you're going to be easier for you, where you may enjoy it, where you don't have to go to New York City. Absolutely. And to work for a hedge fund in particular, because even smaller ones, because bigger banks are always still there. Yeah. But it's funny because my son was he's going to start his graduate program, and he had a choice between a New York school and a Miami school. And he was like, Mom, but I love Miami, and I'll build my network down here. It's a bigger network now, even though New York is still New York.
Sure,
he has one big schools, but he's not living there. So he's like, Mom, it's possible. It's grown so much, Mom. There's so many more opportunities. I'm like, honey, I'm happy to have you here. I know Ricardo feels different, but but basically, so they're seeing that possibility in real time. We're seeing these changes.
Yeah.
Instead of taking 10, 15 years, 20 years, it just seems the pandemic kind of just pushed everything into gear, so to speak,
changed forever.
Yes.
And that's the primary change for what we're seeing in the real estate industry.
That makes sense. But it seems like we are just still hot, right?
We are.
Okay.
We are. We have seen, though, from last year, if you just look at the numbers from last year to this year, inventory's up,
Okay.
sales are down,
Slowing down a little bit.
slowing down. But what we haven't seen much of is, so they keep talking about prices and prices, and some buyers are sat on the fence.
Yeah.
You know, so December of last year, I remember a buyer asking me, "Oh, I don't know, what do you think?
So too high.
I have interest from they're offering me, I have like a 3.2 or 3%. Do you think they'll go lower?" I just like my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if you want the banks to give you the money,
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. But I can't imagine,
Going too much lower.
you know, and I would tell people when I was financing, when I was, you know, I was mortgage lender, I would tell them, you know, your rate is what it is when you're motivated to buy or sell,
Yes.
or to buy or to refinance. Just lock the rate and don't look back.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be so much more upset if you don't lock it and it goes up than if it goes down a little bit.
Yeah.
You're going to be so much.
Yeah, sometimes you don't want to be completely greedy about everything. You can't always pick. I mean, it's like trying to pick up a spot in the market, know where it's going to be on a certain day.
It's impossible.
No, it is. Yeah.
Impossible.
So I'm sure he's shooting himself in the foot. Right
Oh
now.
my goodness. Yeah. So yeah, they waited and they were like, oh, now imagine the interest rates going up almost double what they were looking at before. That's priced them out of the market for the homes they want.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Increases the price. Yeah, absolutely. You know, so it's amazing. Sometimes it's, you know, I would say God puts you where you need to be when you need to be there. But whether it was meant to be for them or they just were there and didn't realize it, because sometimes we don't capitalize on where we are, you know. And Miami, I mean, my home has increased in value. I just sit there and I'm like, I know. Like the whole thing is if even if I sold, where, you know, like where would you go? Where would I go? You know, I mean, it just doesn't. So it doesn't make any sense. I'm like, oh, I guess we're sitting here, guys. You know what I mean? Like, and the kids, my kids love our house. You know, they've been there for the last 11 years, so they're happy. You know, but it's just sometimes you have to also be educated about these things and what works and kind of understand the bigger picture. And I think also working with a broker and knows the environment, knows the market and everything does help. That's for you not to like be lopsided, you know, because phases can come and go. But even when you are in the middle of a phase, and I know everything's been overpriced in Miami, but even then you need someone to help guide you. Is this still more overpriced than normal or average, or, you know, helping you run comps, helping you kind of make those decisions and look at different aspects. You need a school. These are the kind of schools that are nearby, someone that knows the market as well. And a lot of people come in, they never lived here, and it's hard to, you know, you buy a house, you may not have, you know, you may have, if you had to do it again in a year or two, you might have bought the house 10 miles or 5 miles, you know, further south. You don't know. There's someone that can help you make these, you know, think about these things and answer these questions for you. And that goes back to what you originally said, getting to know your client and know their needs, you know. So
it's not just about the transaction. Sometimes, you know, you may have to walk away from it.
Yeah.
You may have to walk away from the client because they're being unrealistic and they're pulling away so much energy.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just gets to that point where you're like, okay, maybe this isn't the time for you. Like,
right.
It's funny. It's sometimes you have to sit them down and say, okay, but you're putting all these obstacles.
Yeah.
Maybe you just don't want to do this right now. Is it possible that maybe this just the timing isn't right for you?
And you're not sure.
Right. Unless you sold your home and you really just don't want to rent or whatever. I get that. But yeah, I'm getting to know.
Right. Sometimes they don't know. It might be better. You know what? You know, why don't you rent somewhere for a year, figure out where you want to live, get to know the area, come back to me. Because there's no point in pulling hair, you know, trying to figure out what they want. And this closet's too big, this closet's too small. Meanwhile, you find them that unicorn and they're still not sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's when you know
when you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that pivotal moment when you find them that unicorn and they're just like, I call it the Goldilocks syndrome. Yeah. We're just too hot to put the bed. There's a reason. There's usually an underlying reason. You see that oftentimes in couples.
Okay.
And yeah, I recently had one similar to that, and you know, one of them wanted. There were other reasons going on, and I caught on it immediately. Yeah. And you know, how do you address that sometimes because it's more personal?
Yes.
And but yeah,
and you got to be careful not to be getting involved in their styles. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, someone wants a big house with a big mansion, and the guy wants a smaller house, just something simple that's,
With a 3-car garage.
yeah, 3 car, yeah, that makes sense, yes. So you're like, okay, what are you supposed to say? You should think differently, and you should want differently. You're not going to say that. So you have to be very delicate and just, right, ultimately they have to make a decision. So that actually kind of brings us into our last topic. And this will help a lot of my clientele, and I'm sure a lot of people in Miami can help use this advice as well. What is the best way to sell a house if you're in the middle of a divorce proceedings? Because that's tricky. You technically have somewhat aligned interest, but they're really not, because obviously depending on who's going to get what in the division of the assets, it can change the trajectory of people's lives, so to speak. And it already is happening. They may have to sell their house and not know where they're going to live and see how expensive it is now. And they're like, okay, well, I can sell my house, but where do I go? So I guess what would your tips be for that? Because that's a tough one.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I guess, luckily, for lack of a better word, have been involved in a number of divorces. So my background as a paralegal, I was 14 years a paralegal. It takes a lot of patience. Those types of transactions when you're dealing with divorce, feelings, emotions, it's, buying a home is stressful enough. Yeah. Selling a home is stressful enough. When you're going through a divorce, compound all of those emotions times 100. Yeah. Children may be involved.
And they love their home.
They love their home. This is where they were born. It's really, really important. And this has been something that I myself have struggled with clients in this scenario is, like you said, you have 2 parties. There should be a line because there's one asset, but 2 parties that own this one asset, but their motivations are not aligned.
Not necessarily. No.
Right. No. So, I mean, I would, in a perfect world, I try and talk to both of them. And I tell your clients, as an agent, if I list a home and they're going through a divorce, I have to be available to both parties. Yeah. I legally have to speak to both parties, and our job, we're transaction agents in Florida, transaction brokers. We have to be ethical, we have to be transparent, we have to disclose. We work for the transaction. Yeah. We work for the sellers, which these are 2 parties that are not aligned. Yeah. What I try and do is, like I said, I meet with both of them.
Yes.
If I can meet with both of them together, it's always the best scenario because I kind of see the synergy between the 2 of them. And you will very quickly learn who has the power. Yeah. Because there's typically one party. Okay. And it's not always the one that the court designates responsible for the sale. Yeah. It's oftentimes just in the marriage, there's always going to be somebody who's the strong. I mean,
it happens. If someone's also stronger financially, understand the transaction better. I think my concern is also sometimes people have motives that are not necessarily rational. Yes. I don't want her to get the house, or I don't want her to be able to sell it or get as much money out. So I want I want to fire sale it, and they're difficult. So I find this where I have to, a lot of times, if I'm drafting an agreement, a marital settlement agreement or something of that nature, I try to lock down as much contingency as I can. Because at the end of the day, it's hard. Like, okay, the listing price is this much. It's going to be based on a realtor's analysis of what it should be listed for, what the market sale is, and you try to have some reasonable language in there. Because someone, there's been, you've heard crazy stories, sells it for $1 to a friend, the house for $1 to a friend. So you want to be careful with these kind of issues. So it's touchy. And then I assume the court wants to also be making sure you might have been brought in as an expert or as a witness. What is going on here? Should we reduce the price? Should we not reduce it 5%? The other thing is, of course, I don't think couples realize you don't want this to be advertised either, because then a buyer knows there's division, there's concern, there's urgency, and they're going to take advantage of it. So I can imagine that's a lot to wrestle with.
It's a lot, and it's funny you say that, but it's typically, and I find that more and more these days, the internet has taken away any secrets you may have. Yes. So if you're going through a divorce, do not be posting.
No.
So you're parting out now.
No, don't.
without your significant other, because people do their homework.
Yes.
Buyers that are looking at, especially in the luxury market, they look to see, they go online, figure out who the owner is, go into the social media and say, oh,
yeah, they're going through a divorce.
they're going through a divorce. They figure it out like that.
Yeah.
Like that. I have people walk into the house, and as we're walking through, they'll tell me, oh, it's sad, they're getting divorced. Or they knew the neighbor who knows somebody, because it's especially in Miami, it's kind of like that, the crowd kind of runs the same circles, so people will know. And
they want inside information too.
They want
inside information before someone else comes in.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, especially in this market, that it doesn't matter. They're going to get what they're going to get. And the value is the value. I think years past, it really was used as a bargaining chip. Now they can't, because it is what it is. Go buy another home, find it.
Well, yeah, because I guess in general the market is so hot too, I guess, so you don't have an issue. Yeah.
Right. It's changed.
Yes, yeah. So that's interesting. Okay, that's a good point, because it does happen, and we forget about that's another aspect of this industry also.
Yeah.
You're not always controlling the circumstances.
No, I just actually had a transaction that, they were separating and there were kids involved. And, the husband referred me, and, he says, we have to sit down and with everything transparent. And it was really, really, it's heartbreaking for me as a mom, because when you get there, you could see the kids are upset.
Yeah.
And they see what's going on. And so.
And when they see you, they know what that means.
Yeah. And in the middle of it, they're having a little bit of a discussion. And so you wear the hat of psychologist. You really do. And we're not attorneys, so we're not, but you really do have to have a little bit of psychology, a lot of empathy.
Yes.
Because they're both wrong, but they're both right.
Yeah.
And they both have the feelings that they feel.
Yeah.
Neither one can feel that you're going to opt for one side or the other. And I was able to manage it, throughout. And, it went relatively well. And it was funny because there were no attorneys involved. I was shocked. But they weren't legally married, but they had been together for many years.
They're cohabitating.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but it was the same thing. They had the kids.
It's the same.
It's
very
the same.
similar. Yeah.
It was just, and it was really, really, like, I got to know both of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you feel for both of them. I want to see them all happy.
Yes. And moving on and be fine.
Moving on. It's getting, and I think you probably go through this too, is telling people, when they're going through something like this, you feel like it's the end. I've been through it, so I understand. I think that helps me help people go through it.
Yes.
So I tried, I think, because I did have some legal background, I tried to pull out the emotion from my divorce. Almost impossible, and as much as I tried.
Yeah.
But if you do pull back the layers of emotion and try and focus on what you're trying to do here, and that's, if you have kids in the house and they have two parents that are disgruntled, and it's not a good scenario for them.
No.
So your home is going to be wherever you're happy and where both parents are happy.
That is exactly my philosophy as well. And a lot of times I'll tell people when they're so angry, and sometimes we'll get people playing dirty on their side.
Because they hang on to the home. The home becomes this toy.
Yes.
That I have to have.
Yes, but I try to tell them, have you been happy in the home lately? Have you and your kids been? They're screaming, because they were kicking and screaming. Everyone's screaming and this, and I'm like, remember that when you have peace, it doesn't matter if you're, in a small apartment of 200 square feet or 40,000 square foot house. What's the point if you're miserable or you're not happy? You're better just fine. You have to think about tomorrow after the divorce. Everyone gets so hung up on right now, and it is important too, because there's certain legal rights that are attached to that. Like you have to enforce and be watching and preserve. But there also has to be a limitation of reasonableness that comes in there. And think about what is it going to be after. I have to remember there is a life after this, and I have to set it up for that. And for me and my kids to be happy.
Right.
You know, if you create trauma everywhere, and these kids have gone through so much trauma, not only you're going to take that trauma with you, and the children are going to take it forever with them. So it's just better to try to, you know, unfortunately not everyone's very reasonable, but if they just think about, okay, we have to do this, we're going to separate, we'll try to do the best we can, and we try to see it more objectively. And think about, like you said, the children. Where are we going to be happy? We will be happy somewhere else. And I wouldn't go around telling the other side that, well, I'll be happy when I leave. No, that's starting a fight.
One other thing is that when they're negotiating in the settlement part, you know, everybody focuses, okay, well, I want to keep the house, or I want to do this, or I want to stay in. They have to remember, when you're negotiating today with the value of that home today. That value can go down, it can go up, but if it goes up, typically for it to go up in a normal market, you're looking at years. It's going to be a while.
No.
We haven't seen that this hasn't been normal.
No.
So for me, I would think always the smartest thing is to sell the home in the market that you're in, because that's the market that you're going to be able to buy.
Yeah.
You're going to get totally top dollar for the most part.
Yes, yeah.
And then you're not having to think of down the line what happens if the values go down, which a lot of people happen.
They do. But look in 2017 and 8, people really lost their shirts on that.
They lost their shirts, and they were negotiating and saying, oh, I want this, and all of a sudden.
No, and then like they got it, and half the time they're having to modify, and they're realizing, wait a minute, I got nothing from the house. I took the house, and everything just dropped. It dropped significantly, and I have upside down on my mortgage versus the value of the house. And I do that a lot with assets. So I'll take a look at them. What do you want? Okay, you want this hedge fund, or you want a certain type of account. Do you know what that means? Do you know what rights and obligations go with that asset? Because not just the house, it's other assets as well. You may want a yacht or the boat or something else. Well, let's think about how much money it costs to maintain the boat. And do you like the boat? Do you know what it means to do that? You know,
typically it's emotion. They want it not because it makes sense.
Yes.
It's because of an emotion that they have attached to this asset.
Yes, correct. Which they're not really looking at it. So I try to bug financial advisors if I can. Can you look at, look at this type of brokerage, this has certain losses. They don't quite understand that meaning, because they're looking at it as just, okay, let me hold on to what I have. But it's not necessarily always, you don't usually always have what you think you have. So, and life will change. Either you're getting alimony, or you'll have to start working, expenses will shift. What do you really want? What do you really need? That's really important. So that was one of the last questions. I think we've hit almost everything. See, there's a little ghost here, I think. There's a little box going off by itself. See?
Oh, there is.
It's the prompter. It's just literally going off by itself. So, but I think we've hit everything today.
It's his fault.
Yeah, no, it's Ricardo's mess. Look, there it goes. Well, I want to thank you for coming in today and being part of this episode. It's so great to have you. I think it's so important to have someone like you that has this background, this experience to help buyers and sellers alike.
Thank you.
Yes,
I appreciate you having me here.
Absolutely. So we want to thank everybody for joining us, and hopefully you'll join us for the next podcast also, which will be announced soon. And please don't forget to follow us on our social media accounts. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a great day.